Hello everybody, and welcome to the July 12th, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine, and if you enjoy this show, you can always read us on the Ephrom Report blog, which is ephromjosine.blogspot.com. There will be a new column published tomorrow. So I think the first thing we need to cover involves, of course, the President of the United States. Because why wouldn't it? I thought I could go a whole week without mentioning him, but this is a news show after all, so I kind of have to break down the news, as well as make fun of people on the Daily Wire. Basically, what happened this time is the president, Donald Trump, made some comments calling out other members of NATO for not spending enough of their GDP, as opposed to the United States, which spends the most on GDP for NATO. Now, to the president's credit, and I next to never say that, he did not call for the direct leave of the U.S. from NATO. He is not that wrong. Instead, he just called for the rest of the world to increase their military spending when it came to NATO. And of course, NATO was created just after World War II, specifically to keep another World War II from happening. However, it seems like the U.S. has been the one who pays the most. Let me give you an idea. A graph from the Daily Mail found that, out of percentage of GDP, the United States spends 3.6%. In case you are wondering, all NATO members are, at least on paper, required to spend at least 2% of their GDP. However, the only nations that made it in the year of this graph were the United States, Greece, oddly enough, the United Kingdom, Estonia, and Poland at 3.6%, 2.4%, 2.2%, 2.2%, and 2% respectively. I'm actually surprised Greece, of all places, has managed to keep their promise. Another graph which CNN Money put out just after a Democratic debate when both Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton called this out also pointed out that the exact numbers for said countries are 3.62% for the United States, 2.46% for Greece, 2.18% for Poland, 2.04% for Estonia, and 2.07% for the United Kingdom. Now, I'm a little mixed here because on one hand, I do think all NATO members, if they want to be part of NATO, should pay that 2%. That is part of the rule. But on the other hand, can I just ask, why are we spending over 3.5% of our GDP on NATO? I mean, where are all the fiscal conservatives outcrying not just that other NATO members aren't spending enough, but that we're spending too much? If somebody says, hey, I can give you this for $2, do you just go to them and say, well, here are $3.62. Keep the change? No, that'd be ridiculous. I think part of the answer is scale back how much we spend on NATO from 3.6% to hopefully around 2%, but even 2.5% would be nice. And mind you, we have a bigger GDP than the entirety of the European Union. So even then, this wouldn't be, some big... They'd still have a lot of money, even if we just gave them 2%. But fiscal conservative Donald Trump does not like that. Instead, he wants everyone else to pay 3.6%, while he just keeps spending more money and getting us more into debt, and then complaining Democrats are getting us into debt. You ever notice that, by the way? Republicans have been the biggest driver of the debt, and this is one of the things they never tell you. We only need to spend 2%. We're nearly spending twice that. How is that fiscally conservative? But I can throw out percentages all day, in case you are wondering how much that is. Well, Statistica, at least I think that's how you pronounce it, .com made a graph on expenditures of NATO countries in 2016. It turns out the United States spent on NATO, I am not kidding you here, $664 billion, $58 million. That year, The second biggest expenditure was the United Kingdom at $60 billion. We spent over $600 billion more than the United Kingdom. Now, I want everyone to pause it. You don't even have to pause it. I'll wait for you. I'll go walk to the end of this room and come back. I want you to pull up the national debt clock right now. Unless you're watching this at a point where we've stopped doing that system. I'll be right back. Give me a second. See, I'm doing this so you don't even have to pause it. It's much easier for you. Aren't I a nice guy like that? You pulled it up yet? And I'll give you a little longer. I'll give you a little longer. Because I'm nice. I'm just a nice guy. You did that? Okay. Now look at that. Now let me continue. Let me read that number to you again. We spent $664 billion on NATO in 2016. May I remind you, again, that is 3.6% of our GDP. Almost twice as much as we're supposed to give to NATO. I feel I should also point out that there are now reports out that NATO members are going to start increasing funding. However, again, the United States should start pulling back its funding towards NATO, not the other way around. And before someone accuses me of being an isolationist, which, on a side note, is probably my favorite buzzword of all time, I'm not saying pull out of NATO. I'm saying if they want us to only pay a certain amount, don't pay nearly twice that amount. And while we're at it, there are reports out that Donald Trump needed to be convinced to not invade Venezuela. Maybe let's not do that either. I don't know. Can I just ask real quick, by the way, how did my freedom get into Venezuela? Is it on the same truck Iraq's WMDs were on? I don't get that. Here's another story, this time on immigration. Republicans to bring House Democrats' abolish ICE bill up for a vote. Okay, a few things. One, stop calling them Democrats. They're not Democrats. They are, as I've said before, communists. As someone who considers himself politically a Democrat, I have to say, I'm ashamed of this idea. I really am. I've made it very clear on the show I am against abolishing the Immigration Custom Enforcement because the fact is the United States needs a border. Not only that, but this idea is incredibly unpopular. Most people do not want open borders, and this has basically become, you know how during like every Republican presidency, most candidates, or during most presidential runs, a lot of Republican candidates are like, abolish the IRS! Well, I'm worried abolish ICE will just become like that. You know, where it's, no, we'll just abolish ICE. Okay, then how will we deal with immigration? We won't. And not only that, but ICE has broken up sex trafficking and has actually helped arrest pedophiles. Who is honestly against that other than ideologues who just want open borders? And if you want to argue we need to restructure ICE or put stricter regulations on them, I'd agree with that. However, downright abolishing them is an awful idea. And not only that, but due to how unpopular this idea is, if this becomes the mainstream of the Democratic Party, I don't even think there'll be a Democratic Party by 4 years from then. The second the Democrats put abolish ICE in their official platform in any state, there will not be a Democratic Party in that state for, or at least I'd say after a good 8 years. They'd have been taken over by some other party who may have even made their way to Congress at that point. And the second that party makes their way to Congress, the Democrats are basically gone at that point. I don't know who it will be. Maybe it'll be the Green Party. Maybe it'll be the Libertarians. I hope it's not the libertarians. Anyway, that's it. I'm Ephrom, and good night.